Hello everybody, this is Miss Amanda at Gorman Nature Center. Welcome to your virtual field trip. I'm going to be walking you through a couple things today so that you can experience what the Nature Center is like, even though you don't get to be here in person. And hopefully afterwards you can go out and do your own exploration. Maybe you can come to the Gorman Nature Center or do some things at home. I'll give you guys some nature tasks after we've gone through some of the things at the Nature Center, and you'll have a chance to get into some nature on your own, because it's just not the same if you don't get your hands on some of it. So we are here outside today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the property here at the Gorman Nature Center. We are at one of our ponds. There's lots of birds singing today, and if you were here, you would have a nice warm day to take a field trip. There's some turtles sitting out that I'll make sure we give you guys a look at. And there are lots and lots of creatures in here. We're going to get to study some of the creatures. I'm going to scoop some of them out of the pond, and you're going to get to see what kind of things we have living under the water. We're going to do a pond exploration. When we find all those creatures under the water, we call that biodiversity. So the biodiversity of our pond is hopefully high. We want to see a whole bunch of different kinds of creatures inside the pond. So diversity is just a lot of something, and bio means living. So we want to find a lot of different types of living things. Now we also have a lot of good biodiversity up here at the pond too. There's a yellow warbler singing right there above my head. He's migrating. If you've never heard the word migration, that's when an animal moves from one place to the other. So we actually have amphibians that migrate, and there's another singer right here called the spring peeper. And he is a type of frog, a little teeny tiny frog that fits on your thumb, and they migrate in the spring. They wake up, they move into ponds and vernal pools to lay their eggs, and then back out in the summertime. So we even call that migration. That's a teeny tiny migration. He might move from right here just right into the pond, and we call that migration. That warbler that was singing above me, we call that migration, but he travels thousands of miles. He flies all the way from South America up past us into Canada to have a nest, and then in the fall all the way back down. So they're doing that to stay warm. Our amphibians, like the spring peeper frog, are also staying warm, but they're hibernating in the winter time. So migration is when you move. Hibernation is when you go someplace and kind of go into a state of sleep. So dormancy, a state of being asleep for the whole winter so that you don't freeze to death. Because around here, it's usually pretty cold in the winter time. You would not want to be stuck out in the open waiting for winter to come. You want to be someplace warm, like all the way underground, or down south like the birds do. So that's just a little introduction to our outside portion. Hope you guys enjoy.
Hi everybody, this is Jason Larson, Director of the Richland County Park District. I'm here today with one of our animal ambassadors, our education animals, for our virtual classroom series. This way we can have an opportunity to bring our educational animals right into the classroom for folks to be able to see them and learn about them. So we're going to start off today with our eastern black rat snake. They're typically now called the eastern gray rat snake, but we've always known them as the black rat snake. This is the largest species of snake in the state of Ohio. A full-grown adult can get to be 6-7 feet long or more. It is the largest snake that we have in the state of Ohio. There are 3 species of black snake in Ohio. The eastern black rat snake, which is a constrictor, very good climber, can get up into trees and into buildings and that kind of thing. The eastern black racer, which we also have in Richland County, which is much more of an open grassland type animal. You might see it out more in farm areas, not necessarily in the forest and that type of thing. And then down in southern Ohio, we have the black king snake, which is a really cool snake, which is immune to the venom of the venomous species of snakes in Ohio, like copperheads and rattlesnakes. This is by far the most common black snake that you will see in our area. You don't tend to see very many big ones anymore because there are not as many farms around these local areas, especially around Mansfield and Ontario. So we don't tend to see a lot of big ones. People also get a little confused when they see a snake that's especially 6 or 7 feet long, and they get worried about it. So a lot of these, when they get to a pretty good size, end up being killed just because people aren't aware of what they are, and they're scared of them, and they're just not aware. So that's one of the reasons that we have our educational animals here at the Nature Center, is to show people what the native animals are in our area. When we bring the school kids in, we like to let them look around to see the different things we have here, our native snakes, turtles, the different types of frogs and toads and salamanders. And a lot of times the kids will wonder why we don't have the same types of things that you might see at a zoo. And what we try to do here is to have these animals available not only to use for educational purposes, to take out into the classrooms, but also to have here as display animals, so that when people visit our area, whether they're local folks or they're folks from out of town visiting, they get a general idea of the different types of animals, the different species that we have here in Richland County and the surrounding area. So they serve a dual purpose, both for education in the schools and for education here in the general public. So we like to have opportunities for people to be able to handle them, to look at them up close, to get a general sense that this isn't something that they need to be worried about. This is a snake that's over 6 feet long. He's probably about 6.5 feet long now, almost 7, I think, when I measured him the other day. And obviously you can see the snake isn't really all that worried about me. He's a constrictor. He's worried about making sure that he's secure. He thinks he's up in a tree. He's warm. He's not attacking me. He's not doing anything to me. What we like to tell the kids is that for any general animal that we would talk about, is that animals primarily are here to do 3 particular things. Number 1 is that animals don't want to be food. They don't want to be eaten by other predators, other animals that are out there. So they have adaptations to be able to help them stay away from predators, to help them find food, things like that. Number 2, they want to find food. They have to be able to find food to survive. So the different adaptations and characteristics that they have, their camouflage, the way that they eat, or so on and so forth, are ways that can help the animal to get its food. And then number 3 is that at some point in its life, it's going to have to reproduce. It's going to have to, like in this case, it's going to have to lay eggs and have little baby snakes. If we don't reproduce, if we don't have more snakes, then there won't be any other snakes out there to repopulate. So those 3 things are important to keep in mind. Number 1, that it wants to find food. Number 2, that it doesn't want to be food. And number 3, that at some point it's going to have to reproduce. So we tell people as well, these animals do things for a particular reason. When people call and they want to know about a snake at the Nature Center, I've got a snake in my backyard, why do I have snakes? We always try to tell people there are animals in your yard, whether it's a snake, a possum, a skunk, whatever, a bat. They're there for a reason, and they're probably there for one of those reasons we talked about. Are they there looking for food? Are they there looking for shelter, to get away from predators? Are they looking for a place to have their young? So a lot of times I'll point out with the snake is that, the snake will come up here and the snake's going to give me a little lick with its tongue. Now, it's not necessarily licking me. What it's doing is that's how snakes smell. Snakes use an organ in the roof of their mouth that goes up into their brain called the Jacobson's organ. It's a hole that has 2 forks that go along with the forked tongue. And basically what the snake does is it senses, it picks up molecules of smell, and it puts that the tongue up into the Jacobson's organ, and it tells the snake what it's smelling. The forked tongue helps it get more surface area, and it actually helps direct the snake as to whether it wants to go to the right or to the left or towards the center where there's more scent molecules in the middle. But the snake is smelling, and when the snake comes up and smells me, the snake doesn't bite me. So the snake knows that I'm not something it wants to eat, and the snake knows that I'm not a predator that it needs to be worried about. Again, it's up off the ground. This type of snake likes to climb. The snake isn't worried about anything, so it's not going to bite. Now, doesn't mean that if we went out in the wild and we found one of these black rat snakes and we picked it up, that it wouldn't bite us, because this snake really doesn't have any way to defend itself. People get worried that all snakes are venomous. We do have 3 species of venomous snakes in Ohio, 2 species of rattlesnake and the northern copperhead. But historical records, we don't have a lot of them for Richland County. In fact, you have to go back into the 1800s until you'll find records of rattlesnakes, timber rattlesnakes, down in the southern part of Richland County. Those habitats and those populations are no longer there anymore. So we really don't have to worry about venomous snakes in Richland County. But we want to show people that, you know, these snakes they can't really do anything to you. They can't really harm you. And we want people to be able to see that. Even if this snake were to bite you, it would be like scraping your hand along a raspberry or a blackberry bush or a rose, the prickles on a rose bush. It's not going to do a lot of damage to you. This snake has no arms or legs. It can't scratch or hit you. It has very, very tiny teeth in its mouth. It can't do very much damage to you. And there isn't a single solitary person out there that I know that can't run away from a snake and get away from that snake faster than that snake can get to it. So there are a lot of misconceptions about snakes, a lot of fears, and that's one of the reasons we have these animals, to be able to educate folks about them so they know that they don't really need to fear anything. These animals serve an important purpose in our ecosystems. They eat a lot of rodents, they eat a lot of insects. They're here for a reason. And that's why we want to let people know they don't have to worry very much about this snake. I do want to show you how big he is. Again, he's over 6.5 feet long. And I want to show you how good a climber he is as well. So when the snake's tongue is out, he's always sensing. That's how he smells, and that's one of the best ways he has of his senses to get around. Snakes don't see very well. They don't have ears, so they can't hear. They do feel vibrations through their jaw up into their remnant ear bones in their head. But basically, he's always trying to smell. So when he gets in a new place, he gets towards the ground, he wants to know what's going on. But when he realizes that he can't get to the ground, hopefully he'll turn around and he'll decide to go the other way. And he's probably not going to do it. But you can see he's holding on to me. I'm not really holding on to him too much. They're very, very good climbers. There he goes. Oh, maybe not. So he's not doing a good job of putting on a show today. But they are very, very good climbers. They can climb up their body. They can get up tree trunks. They can get into buildings. That's why we tell people, when you're outside and you're looking for a black rat snake, make sure you look up too. Some snakes do climb. I've seen garter snakes get up into bushes. Even rattlesnakes will climb up into bushes down in southern Ohio. So a lot of times you have to be aware that snakes aren't just on the ground. And if there is a species of snake in our area that would be up in a tree or up in the rafters of a building or a barn, this would definitely be the snake. This is a snake, one of the snakes in Ohio, especially in our area, that doesn't get too bad of a rap, because if you live somewhere out in the country, you live near a farm, this might be a snake that your grandparents or your great-grandparents talked about. This would have been one of the snakes that would have gotten into the barn, and it would have been in there to eat rodents, mice, rats, and that type of thing. So this might be one that Grandpa would say, hey, don't bother that snake, don't hurt it, because it's in there for particular reasons. So, but a lot of times these snakes look completely different when they're babies, and people see that and they don't recognize them as they would know them as an adult. And a lot of times they might kill them as a juvenile just because they're not familiar with what they are, their coloration and that type of thing. And again, if you'd like to come to the Nature Center when we open back up, you can see we have both adult and juvenile black rat snakes, so you can see the difference in them. So that's our eastern black rat snake. Again, one of our educational animals here at Gorman Nature Center, the largest snake in the state of Ohio. And hopefully that'll give you a little bit of background about the snakes and what they do. Again, we do have lots of educational animals here, including many species of snakes. So you can come to the Nature Center and see eastern garter snakes. You can see 2 of the venomous snakes we have in Ohio, the timber rattler snake and the copperhead. But from time to time we also get other species like milk snakes and common water snakes, and we try to get a lot of the species in here so people will see a lot of the common ones we have. So we encourage you to come visit us here at the Nature Center when we're able to have visitors and learn a little bit more about the snakes that we have here in Richland County. Thanks, everybody. Hi everyone, this is Jason Larson, the Director of the Richland County Park District, back again with another one of our educational animal ambassadors. Today I have one of our eastern box turtles. This used to be a fairly common species here in the state of Ohio, especially in the forested parts of the state. But as we've gotten a lot of habitat fragmentation, we start to see fewer and fewer of these turtles nowadays. We have them here. And again, our educational animals are not pets, and we don't name them as such, but we do, let people know what they are by the species that they are when they come here to visit them in the Nature Center. So we want people to know this is a box turtle, an eastern box turtle. We don't want people to know that this is Bob the box turtle because he's not our pet. Because unfortunately for these box turtles, they do make good pets. Different types of box turtles around the world can make very good pets. But this turtle needs to be left out in the wild so he can do all the things that a turtle needs to do out in the woods. And as their habitat has become less and less in the state of Ohio, they have a harder time finding a place to find food, lay their eggs, and find other turtles as well. Especially if there are only so many turtles in a particular area, this male turtle would have a hard time finding a female turtle to reproduce with and lay eggs. And now that there's a lot of habitat fragmentation as well, when that turtle would lay eggs, more than likely they're going to be dug up by a skunk or a possum or a fox or a dog or a cat and eaten. So we get very, very few of these box turtles in our area anymore. You have to go further down south to actually have more and more of them. In fact, they've had studies that show that you have to have at least 7 or 8 of these box turtles per square mile to be able to reproduce. So if you only have 1 or 2 box turtles in an area, you're not going to get any new box turtles. They do live a very, very long time, so they might persist in an area for a long time where they might not even have the proper habitat anymore, but they'll live to be over 100 years old, so they might stay in that particular area because they'll stay in the area where they were born, which is probably less than a square mile in size for their entire life. They always stay there. They know where to go. It may be you see them crossing a road because when they were born, there wasn't a road there before. It used to just be a piece of wood. So they know where everything is out there. They know where to find food, find shelter, lay their eggs, and so on and so forth. So if you find one of these turtles in the woods, take a moment to appreciate it. You don't necessarily need to pick it up or do anything with it. If you would like to, be aware that he might nip on your finger or something, so you don't want to poke him in the nose. But appreciate him for what he is, take a look at him, and then put him back down on the ground so that he can go about his business and continue to be a turtle. It really doesn't do him any good for you to take him home and make him a pet. The other end of that is that collecting reptiles in the state of Ohio is illegal. You have to have a scientific collecting permit or an education permit to have these animals in captivity, with the exception of the spiny softshell turtle and the snapping turtle, which you still have to have a fishing license to be able to go out and harvest them. All the snakes, all the lizards, all the other turtles in the state of Ohio are protected by law. So technically you cannot go out and pick this turtle up and make a pet out of him. So that's something to keep in mind as well, to keep the turtle out there so he can do the things that he needs to do. We call this a box turtle because, again, we talked about with the snakes and a lot of the other animals that we have, that animals do things for 3 particular reasons. Number 1, they want to find food. Number 2, they don't want to be food. And number 3, at some point in their life, they're going to have to find a mate and reproduce. So this turtle's called a box turtle because he doesn't move very fast. If you set him down on the ground, he doesn't run away. He can swim, but he can't go very fast if he gets in water. So he's not going to be able to get away from a predator. So what he does is he goes inside of his shell. He has an adaptation that allows him to tuck all of his parts, his legs, his tail, and even his head, which he isn't going to do it right now, but he can pop his head in there as well, and he can close himself up completely, and he just looks like a very colorful rock sitting on the forest floor. Now, there aren't very many animals around nowadays. We don't have any bears, we don't have any wolves, anything that could actually get this turtle in their mouth and maybe crack the shell and kill it and eat it. So if he could get into his shell, he's safe. He can stay away from predators. He can get away from things that might try to eat him. In fact, his biggest threats right now around this area would be man. People picking him up and taking him home, or getting run over by a car when he's trying to cross the road. So he can go in his shell and protect himself. Now, box turtles look a lot like tortoises. You might find like a gopher tortoise down south, or the different types of tortoises out west or in different parts of the world. But they're actually more closely related to our water turtles in the area. This guy's more closely related to a painted turtle or a snapping turtle than he is actually to other species of tortoise. Another way that he can protect himself is, if you look at his very colorful shell, he can camouflage himself. So even if he's sitting still in the woods, he's going to look like a lot of the different things you might see on the forest floor. He's colored with oranges and yellows and browns and blacks, which might represent things like wood or soil or leaves that have fallen off the trees. So his coloration, which he has on his head, his feet, if he stays very still, that's going to allow him to stay camouflaged and stay away from predators. If that wouldn't work for him, then again, he could go inside of his shell and he could stay safe. Now, we always talk to the kids about, well, how would the turtle stay safe in his shell? Because if you listen here, you can hear that the turtle shell is very hard. And when we talk to the kids, they always say all these different things that the turtle shell might be. Is it plastic? Is it wood? Is it rock? We talk about whether or not those things are alive, if they ever have been alive in the past. And obviously, we can see the turtle is alive. He doesn't have a shell that's made of plastic or wood or rock, because the turtle is alive. And the turtle shell is actually made out of bone, just like the bones you have inside of your body. And the turtle's shell actually is made out of his ribs. So the ribs that would have been in the front of his body and the back of his body, like you have inside of you to keep your heart and your lungs safe, have now totally encompassed the turtle here to be able to keep him safe from predators. So he wears his armor on the outside here to keep his inside safe, and he can actually go inside of himself there to keep safe. I do have another example of a box turtle shell here. I don't know if Amanda can zoom in on that, but if you look inside, you can actually see the backbone. You can see the spine. So we know that this turtle is attached to his shell. If you look on the back of this turtle, you can see his spine going down as well. Sometimes we'll tell the kids, you know, you got to remember, like, the turtle will, he's not like the turtle in the cartoons on Saturday morning that can take off his shell and run around in his underwear. He's always attached to his shell. When we find a shell like this, we know the animal is dead. It's not alive anymore because it's died and something has come along and eaten it, and you can still see what's left of the shell. The colored pattern on here, the scales, which are called scutes on a turtle, will fall off with age as well. You can see some of them have fallen off this shell. And that part of the turtle shell, the outside of it, is actually made up of keratin, the same thing that your hair and your nails are made of, and that protects the outside of the turtle shell as well. The turtle likes to eat a lot of different things. He likes to eat just about anything he can get a hold of. He likes berries and fruit, things that are low-hanging, strawberries. He might come into your garden and get your strawberries. He'll eat little tiny insects and animals, earthworms, night crawlers, pretty much anything he can get a hold of that's tasty to a turtle. So he'll eat just about everything. And occasionally when we talk to kids about holding the turtle, we'll want to make sure to tell them, too, don't poke the turtle in the nose, because if you wiggle your finger, he might think that you're some tasty treat that he wants to latch onto. And a lot of people get more afraid of the snakes than they do of the turtles here. I've been bitten by more snakes than bitten by more turtles than snakes, and I can tell you that when a turtle bites you, it hurts a lot worse than getting bitten by a snake does. One last thing I want to tell you about the turtle here before we go is that most of the time with reptiles, you have a hard time telling boys from girls. A lot of times they all look the same. even in turtles. But there are a couple ways you can tell the boy turtles from the girl turtles. Sometimes you can use the length of the tail. Most boy turtles have a much longer tail than the girls do. But on a box turtle, there are a couple easy ways. You can look at the eye, the color of the eye on the turtle. If it's a red, orange, or a yellow eye, then we know it's a male turtle. If it's a brown eye, we know it's a female. One other thing is that on the male turtles, they have two parts to their shell. Their carapace, which is the top, and their plasteron, which is the bottom. And on male box turtles, the plasteron has a little curve in the bottom of it. If it were a female box turtle, that portion of the shell would be flat. So if we put one and one together, we can see number one, he has a curve in the bottom of his shell, and that number two, he has a nice orange eye, so that we can deduce using our scientific method that this must be a male box turtle. So that is the eastern box turtle. If you're lucky and you live down in Richland County in parts like around Belleville and Butler, you might still be able to see these turtles walking around in the woods. Otherwise, you're going to have to probably go further into southern Ohio or down into some of the other southern states to see a lot of eastern box turtles walking around. So hopefully someday here soon we're going to have a box turtle garden at the Nature Center so these guys can live outside and be exposed to the elements all year long and go through their natural cycle here, and then people can visit them all year long if the Nature Center is closed. But we encourage you when the Nature Center is open to come in and visit our box turtles and our other educational animals here, and they'd like to come in and see you visit at some point. So thanks again, friends, and we'll see you next time with another animal.
All right, everybody, welcome to your pond section of the virtual field trip. This is our main pond here, our biggest pond at the Gorman Nature Center. It's right by the front of the property, so if you ever come to visit, it's pretty easy to find. This area that I'm standing on, we call our peninsula. And if you do choose to come and look around for some creatures here at the Gorman Nature Center, we really want you to stay on the trails or on the peninsula. So we have seen people, come and using nets. If you choose to do that, fine, but we have some rare plants around the other edges that we really don't want you guys getting in. So I'm going to show you what we do here. Maybe if you have your own net at home, you can come and practice this on your own. But what I have here is a scientific tool. This is our net, our dip net we call it. And I'm going to use this to try to catch some aquatic animals from our pond. I'm going to show you how to use it, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a couple scoops and see what we can find. I'm going to give you a close look at what we found inside of our pond here. So what you're going to do is take this net. You're going to bend your knees. That's the most important part because we don't want you falling in. You're going to reach out into the pond. This is just practice. I'm going to reach back here, and you're going to slap this down onto the mud all the way down to the bottom of the pond and drag it towards you. If you scoop with your net like this, the animals are going to swim right out of the top. So you're trapping them like you're trapping a bee inside of your house to put it back outside with a cup. You want it to be able to not escape. So you're dragging it towards you, kind of gently flipping it up. I'm going to be looking inside to see if anything's moving. There are things in there, teeny tiny things that I won't see moving, but today we're just really focusing on macro things. So big things, big enough that I can see with my eye. And then we're going to take a close look at them. Because of all those small things, I want all of the mud and gunk in my net to go back into the pond. I don't want it to be sitting on the peninsula. Those animals that need water to survive are going to die out here in the dry air on the peninsula. So I'll do a couple scoops, and then I'll show you some of the stuff we caught. Okay, so here are some of our captures. We put it in a little bowl here and observe them so we can be scientists. We've only got 3 things in here right now. It's a pretty rainy day. Everybody's kind of hiding, just like you're hiding in your house on a rainy day. Unless you want to play in the rain, they're hiding kind of pretty deep out in the pond, and it's still pretty chilly right now, early in the spring. But we did catch some things. Let's go biggest to smallest. So first thing I want to show you guys is this snail. This is actually called an apple snail, and these are non-native. Native means it was from here originally. So this is an animal that was introduced from another country, and it doesn't really belong in our pond. So this is something we're actually going to remove. Everything else that's native is going to stay in the pond so that it can continue living there. A lot of non-native species can affect the way that an ecosystem or a habitat operates. So this guy we'll take inside with us, and we'll put it in the turtle tank. We also caught ourselves a tadpole. Now this is probably one of our green frog or bullfrog tadpoles. He's a pretty small guy for a bullfrog or a green frog, but this time of year there's really not anything else that gets this big. Bullfrogs and green frogs will stay in the pond. They'll stay in the pond for multiple years. So he's pretty small. He's probably from a hatch last year. This is probably his first spring. He probably hatched in the fall. And it's hard for me to tell right now if it's going to be a green frog or a bullfrog. Once they're adults, it's pretty easy to tell, but when they're tadpoles, it's pretty hard. I like to talk about their mouths. Tadpoles are really cool because, let's see if we can get a good look there. A tadpole has a circular mouth. We'll put him back here in a second, but that circular mouth is very different from an adult's mouth, that big smile that they're using to catch big things like fish, like other frogs. A full-grown bullfrog can even eat baby ducks and mice. So if you picture something as big as that going into a frog's mouth, he has to have a great big mouth to take those things in and swallow them. A tadpole is eating things like algae. So algae is like the fuzzy green stuff that grows on the inside of your fish tank. So they're kind of sucking that algae off of rocks and plants, and that gives them an opportunity not to have to compete with the adults of their species. So if you're a baby tadpole that's going to grow up into a bullfrog, you can eat algae. Your family, your big grown-up family, can eat other creatures, so they can be predators, and you won't have to fight over food. So that's kind of a good adaptation for a species to have. Our last thing, I don't know if you'll be able to get to see him do the really cool thing that he can do, but this is a dragonfly nymph. This is a baby dragonfly. So this guy is going to go through metamorphosis just the same as a tadpole does, or a caterpillar to change into a butterfly, and he is going to pop right out of this skin, and he's going to have wings that expand that allow him to fly. He's got pretty good fingers for holding on, so he's got little hairs on his feet. Those little hairs are going to help him hold onto a stick. He's going to split right out the back part of his skin. We call that an exuvia when they shed out of their skin. And he's going to have wings already made in there that are going to just unfold and fill up and allow him to fly away. And there's all different kinds of dragonflies and damselflies that fly around here. A dragonfly, if you want to know the difference between the two, a dragonfly is the one that has great big eyes like a helmet on the front of its head, and it usually perches with its wings spread. So all four wings out to the side like an airplane. A damselfly is skinny. It looks kind of like a flying stick. It has two eyes that are separate from each other, so out kind of on the sides of its head. And typically a damselfly will rest with its wings behind its back. So instead of spread out to the side, it'll have them behind its back, unless it's a certain kind of damselfly called a spread wing, and they will kind of take their four wings and put them at a diagonal. So not all the way flat like an airplane, kind of in between their back and all the way spread out. But this is one of the dragonflies. Hard to tell which one, again, when they're nymphs, but they're really, really cool. We'll see if we can see them swim. My favorite thing about a dragonfly is the way that they swim and breathe. A dragonfly nymph uses jet propulsion. So it is sucking up water and shooting it back out of its bottom in order to swim quickly, and that's also how it's breathing. It's using its butt to breathe. So they have something called tracheal gills. They don't have those when they're an adult because they're in the air. Obviously, they have something called spiracles when they're an adult, little holes on their side that they use to suck up oxygen, but I'm not sure he's going to do it for us. But when they're babies, they use those gills. And there are some great big dragonflies called darners that you really can see that on. So if you ever do something like this and look for a dragonfly and you find a great big dragonfly nymph, then maybe you'll, oh, there, he's doing it a little bit. I'm not sure if you got a good look at it, but he kind of gave you a look there at his propulsion. So those are 3 of our most common catches here at the pond. Again, if you ever want to try this on your own, when the Nature Center is open, we do have nets that we're willing to let people borrow, not keep, but borrow, as long as we're going to be around for a while. Now, again, that's at the availability of staff. Or if you have your own net and you want to stay on this peninsula area, then you can come here and do your own discovering. Again, it's best if you have permission, the same thing for that. So if you know you're going to come out on a certain day and you want to be able to search around our pond, it's best for you to contact us. Email or Facebook would probably be the best one right now, but of course you can call as well and tell us that you're coming so that we can make sure you'll have a good time and that we don't have anything else going on here that would interrupt your exploring. So with that, we conclude our virtual field trip. Hope you guys had a good time, and we hope to see you soon.